And welcome to the veritable edge of Western civilization. I am your host, D.A.English, coming to you live from Third Rock from the Sun, Venice Beach, California. If I sound a little exuberant, it's because I have some really friggin' great news. Several great newses, or newsy, as it were. You like to shave? Well, courtesy of radiation. Very expensive shave. Most of these hair follicles have been rendered useless for the foreseeable future, and I'm kind of okay with that. If I sound like I have much more vitality than I have for the past month, it's because it's true. And the reason is, today is the 5th day I've actually eaten food. And until 5 days ago, I weighed 150 pounds. As of this morning, I weighed a little over 155. And that's what you get when you eat about 5 times a day. Unfortunately for me, I still can't taste it. And it's taken some work to get past the psychology of the retching on my own saliva thing. But I think we're there. And I started doing a couple of things to try to wake up instead of passively waiting for my what do you call them? Taste buds to grow back. I'm proactively attempting to sing them the wake up song. You know, brushing my tongue a couple times a day, eating a lot of actually mustard powder in various forms. But anyway, to the good news. Which to go first? Okay, so I've actually been saving this good news till the other good news came through today. But about, what is today? Today is Thursday? Friday. Today's Friday. So a week ago today actually. Boy, time flies when you're working on something. A week ago today, I attempted to call. I put in a call to the radiation oncologist, and because at that point it had been exactly 2 weeks since I had suspended radiation treatments, and I told them that I would contact them when the 2 weeks was up to see if they, where we stood. And they were like, okay. They tried to talk me out of suspending treatment and everything, but I had really good cause, basically trying to limit my exposure, because at that point I was a third of the way through. They had basically the radiation oncologist had prescribed 5,000 units of radiation over 5 weeks, and then another 2,000 units on top of that over another 2 weeks. And the way that he had designed that program was that they were going to irradiate everything from here to the base of my neck, to basically attempt to keep the cancer from spreading. That was their justification. But at that point, when they finally started the radiation, the thing in the back of my throat had already been eliminated by the chemo, because they started late. The radiation started late. It started a week and a half after I'd already had the chemo, and it had gotten rid of the thumb-sized tumor in the back of my mouth. And so by the second radiation treatment, it was already gone, and I told them that, and they were like, yeah, that's nice, that's good, we're going to keep going. And so we kept going. I did 2.5 weeks of their program. I did 2,400 units of radiation. And at that point, I had told them, I had asked to have a conversation with the radiation oncologist. And so we had this conversation where I basically, told him that I felt like in my bones, I felt like we needed to flip this around. So what they had intended to do was to do that 5,000 units from here to here. And then in the last 2 weeks, they were going to focus on specifically on this neck thing, right? The neck site. There was a lymph node, 3 lymph nodes right there that were initially, as big as a jumbo-sized egg when this whole thing started, when we started treatment in February. And I said, can we just flip that around? Can we just focus on the neck site and stop doing the whole, scorched earth policy here? And he was like, well, we had a long conversation, and the bottom line was he came out of it saying basically that he would try to recalculate, and we would have a conversation at our next weekly meeting, right? Well, that kind of wasn't good enough for me, and I took, they only did it 5 days a week, so I took the weekend off. I mean, we take the weekend off, but I took that following Monday off. And our meeting was supposed to be on Tuesday, and he didn't show up. And so literally that was the last radiation treatment that I had. Because the next day I had my monthly consultation with my regular oncologist, and she told me that after looking at my blood work and looking at where we were at and everything, she said that I didn't need to do any more chemo. They had already scheduled 2 more infusions, but they felt, the 2 that I'd done was plenty, and that to do any more would have just been overkill. And I was elated and in total agreement. Man, that looks like a heart. Oh no, it's a clamshell. Cool. So, what ended up happening was that I said to her, I told her my misgivings about continuing the radiation treatment. I said, basically, I really felt like, my intuition was telling me to stop, to at least suspend the radiation treatments, because at the rate that this was, receding, it was obvious to me that the support system for the cancer had collapsed and was cascading at an exponential rate. And it was very possible that within a couple of weeks, this whole thing would be gone. And I wanted to give that a shot instead of continuing to just, blanketly radiate my mouth, because this guy was still not, complying with our agreement to reassess and everything. So she said, I think you need to follow your intuition on this. And I slept on it, and the next day I called him up. I called up his office and I said, hey, I'm going to suspend radiation treatment for the next 2 weeks, and I'll contact you in 2 weeks and see, and we can reassess where we're at. Okay. So that was, 3 weeks ago, and a week ago today, to the day of the 2-week stretch, I called their office, and I talked to their people, his people, and I said, I'd like to speak with the doctor about my treatment. And she said, wait a moment, I'll see if I can put you through. She came back on the line, and she said that he's with a patient, and he said that he will contact you as soon as he can when he's through. I haven't heard from him. So, and I have to say, I'm okay with that. Because, in the past week, I'm happy to say that where this thing is at is I literally, this morning, let me give you a look. Okay, I don't know if you can see. I don't know what you're seeing, but you can probably not even tell that there was ever anything there or where it is right now. And honestly, if I didn't know that there was something there for me to look for or feel around for, I wouldn't know where to look, because it basically feels the same on both sides unless I know exactly where to put my finger. And that is different from even the beginning of the week. So as far as I know, this thing is still cascading, is still shrinking, and we're going to keep going with that. So my regular oncologist I waited through the weekend. I waited till Wednesday. And something said I needed to contact my oncologist and tell her what had happened, what had transpired. And so I sent her a text. Luckily, I had her private phone number. And I sent her a text saying, basically, I think it's important for you to know what's transpired. And I told her about the the radiation oncologist. I told her about that I had contacted their offices. I'd left a message for him to call me, and was assured that they would call me. He would call me back when he was free, and I haven't heard from him since last Friday. Since before last Friday. So, and I'm assuming that means that he's basically terminated my treatment, which he at one point threatened to do, because when I asked him initially to revamp his treatment plan. It was a veiled threat, but it was a threat nonetheless. I took it as such. It was like, well, if we don't do it the way that I want to do it, then it's going. I wouldn't feel right about going forward with your treatment, and I would terminate the treatment. And I was like, okay, bro. I had to kind of walk it back a bit and just kind of almost plead with the guy to consider what I was suggesting, And in that conversation, he said, I think there may be something to what you're saying, because, even myself, there are times when I've been irradiating people and I felt like it's almost over treatment. It's like, it's more than people need, but it's what's stipulated in the thing. He said, I'm gonna look back into the literature. There's some, discussion on the discussion boards about, maybe dialing it back, and for these kind of cancers. And I'm like, see, exactly, that's what I'm saying, right? So anyway, this is once again the fruits of self-advocacy. And one of the main lessons here is that even if you are in the, no matter what situation, as long as you're friggin' conscious, your health is your friggin' responsibility, period. You have the last word. You can take the advice of doctors, and, more often than not, you should. But at the end of the day, it's your friggin' decision, because it's your body and your life. And if you don't take responsibility for that, then you get what you deserve. You get what you paid for, basically. So, it's been a theme that's been running through this whole thing. And I don't hold any animosity to these guys, these folks. I'm very grateful for what they did, because I've got this radiation in me that, combined with the chemo, and the fact that I fasted. I did a water fast for the first 14 days after the last infusion, and I went 26 days without eating anything solid. And I did a really solid job of keeping myself alkaline, to the point of almost being overly alkaline. I am glad to say that, I'm standing here talking to you right now, and I have more vitality than I did 5 days ago, and I know, even though, as soon as a week and a half ago, it was a coin toss if I was going to make it, because I was so weak. And I know that, I didn't really talk much about this on here in the past, but this part, the surviving the cure, is where a lot of people buy it. You know, I know of people, I've spoken about it before. I know of a brother that got buried last month because he had the same prognosis as me. You know, he was diagnosed around the same time last fall. His prognosis was a possibility of 100% cure of whatever cancer he had. And I got word last month that they buried him because he was too weak. He couldn't keep up his strength at this stage of it. And I was there, man. I was really close to not making it through this, you know. But the reason why I'm here, there's two reasons why I'm here right now. One is I trusted my intuition, and two, all the donations that all of you folks have made, both energetically, financially, morally, you know, consciously, whatever, have contributed. All that money that you know, which to me it's a lot of money, but you know, to most people, to the government it ain't nothing. The government looked at the money, the sums of money that I deal with. You know, I mean, I made less than $6,000 last year, right? And the government was like, dude, you're eligible for everything, you know? But all that money I used to, I invested in my immune system, basically. You know, I used that money to get all those vitamins and to get all those supplements and to, you know, buy the food that I needed, you know, following my intuition. Something said I needed blueberries, so I started eating blueberries like a crazy person. You know what I mean? I still can't eat enough blueberries. You know, I eat a half a pack of blueberries, frozen blueberries every morning, you know? And I might actually have another one when I get back. So, blueberries are my friend, you know? But, blueberries ain't cheap, and that wouldn't normally be part of I wouldn't normally be able to eat that many blueberries. I'm using blueberries as an example, but you get the general idea. I mean, whenever anybody suggested any kind of like supplements or anything like that, I would do my research and I would go out, and if I could afford it, I'd buy it. You know, if it was in the account, I would buy it, you know? Because at that point, I didn't even know if I was going to live in 2 or 3 months, you know? But at that time, you know, before I started treatment, I was laboring under the misconception that all I had to do was supercharge my immune system and it would get rid of the cancer. Well, it turns out that this specific cancer, that's not a possibility, because as one of the leading researchers in the topic in this specific kind of cancer, who's treated over 10,000 cases, I had a consultation with him over the phone in December, and he told me that, no, bro, this is, you were exposed to a variation of the HPV virus, not sexually transmitted, but there's over 100 varieties of the HPV virus, right? And the one that you were exposed to 25 years ago, in the interim years, it has fused its DNA to the DNA in the cells in your throat. And so that your immune system is never going to react to that because it thinks it's you. And when I found that out, I was like, oh man, because I'd, you know, been investing for 3 months, since September, October, November, December. I've been investing all this energy into, you know, building up an immune system. And I felt really healthy and everything like that. And I had a great immune system, but it wasn't going to do what I had planned for it to do. And that's when I knew I had to do something else. And the fact that, you know, any cannabis exposure that I had for this specific cancer, I'm going to say it again, and I hope that you pass this on to anybody else that ever has squamous cell carcinoma. You really need to let people know this, because there's folks out there that think cannabis is the greatest thing since sliced bread. It's the panacea of all cancers and all that sort of shit, except for this cancer. Of all the cancers on the friggin' planet, I've got the sixth most I don't know, popular is the right word, but you get my meaning. The sixth most prevalent form of cancer, and this cancer is the only cancer that, if you have THC in your system, it actually accelerates the cancer growth by at least 30%. And I am so lucky that I found that out. And it was, when I say lucky, I mean, hold on a sec. It was, whoa. There we go. Just got to roll up the pant leg so I can keep my feet in the water. This is really helping me, hopefully, draw some of the toxins out of the bottoms of my feet. I try to do this every couple of days. They've closed the beaches in LA, and you know, and the last time I did one of these, somebody ragged on me for being on the beach on the video, and I'm like, you have no idea what you're talking about, man. This is saving my life. You know, is this essential? Fuck yeah, it's essential. I want to continue to be here. Thank you very much. So, bottom line is, what I'm trying to say is, I got really lucky because it was like 3 o'clock in the morning. I was about to go. I'd been working on the book, and I was about to go to bed. And I scrolled through my Facebook stuff, and there was a post by a cancer survivor of an article on this paper about the effects of THC and squamous cell carcinoma. And I was like, and it turned everything around. Because as soon as I went back over the past year and looked at what happened with each instance that I took in any amount of THC, because as soon as I got the diagnosis, I tried the Rick Simpson oil protocol, you know, where you do 1,000 milligrams a day, and it's supposed to, you know, kill cancer cells or something like that. I ended up not doing it after a while because it was just too much for me. But as soon as whenever I looked at there were like 4 instances in the past year where I took in cannabis, and when I looked at it, every time there was almost immediately an acceleration of the size of these 2 cancer sites. And it was at that point I was like, this is insane. And then when I looked at in January, I didn't have any more room. You know, there was no more room in my mouth for this thing to grow without seriously damaging things that I wanted to have. And I realized when I looked at everything that I'd done, all the alternative therapies and all that sort of stuff, it was all wonderful stuff, got me really healthy, but not one thing that I was doing had done anything to shrink any of the cancer. And at that point, I realized that I had to undergo therapy, the chemo and radiation therapy, because they had told me that I had the potential, if I started the therapy, of 100% cure, because I was only stage 2, between stage 2 and stage 3. But if I waited any much longer, that window would close, and all we would be talking about is maintenance. And so, as it turned out, I started a month after they initially that they wanted to start, you know, and so I didn't lose anything. I didn't lose that potential 100% cure, and we're still working on that part. So where we're at right now is, as I said, on, I think it was day before yesterday or the day before that, maybe it was Tuesday, I contacted my oncologist, my regular oncologist, and the woman that administered the chemo to me, Dr. Hill at UCLA Harbor. And I let her know what had happened with the radiation oncologist, that I hadn't heard from him, and that I assumed he had terminated my treatment. And the importance of this was, I felt it was important for her to know that the last treatment was March 10th. And what she had said to me in our last consultation was that when I asked her, you know, how do we proceed from here? She said, well, when 12 weeks from your last radiation treatment, we can do a PET scan. And to see if there's any active cancer cells left. And if there isn't, you're good, obviously. And if there is, then, you know, we look at the possibility of doing more radiation or possibly surgery. And I said, okay. But so the other day I told her that the last radiation treatment was March 10th and that there probably wouldn't be any more. Yay! And that by that reckoning, I guess the 12 weeks would bring us to a possible PET scan the first week of June. And we had already scheduled our next consultation for April 15th in the office. Right, thanks. So what ended up happening is climb with the phone in hand. Here we go. Even though this is dangerous as shit. Yeah. Oh yeah. That's what I'm talking about. Yay! Here we go. Here by the grace of God. We're at the end of the beach. Yay! This is the Marina Harbor entrance behind me. That's Playa del Rey over there. And this is Marina del Rey on this side. So, anyway, what I'm saying is, first week of June, possible PET scan. We had already scheduled our next consultation for April 15th, and I was supposed to have a blood draw on April 8th. And so I sent her the text, and a little while later I got a text back. She said, sounds great. She said, our meeting scheduled for the 15th will probably only need to be over the phone. I was like, yay! That means I don't have to be in LA. And she said that, I said, does this mean what happens? Do I still have to come into the county hospital? Yikes. For the blood draw on the 8th? And she said, nope. I was like, yay! So basically, the good news is I've started, we can officially say I've started my recovery phase. We're moving into the recovery phase of all this nonsense. And, which is, you know, kind of cause for hallelujah, I'd say. So, just trying to turn away from the wind for a minute. So that's one of the good newses. At the same time, hey Mark, my good friend Mark Gentry's on here. We call him Crazy Mark for good reason. I was just telling somebody about the story of your government script and you being one of the initial practitioners of LSD 25 for God and Country. I love that story. It says everything about you. And then, of course, I had to tell him the story about the tripping chicken, because you have to. And then, but anyway, Mark is also a cancer survivor. He's 4 months ahead of me. It's a different cancer, but same location, pretty much. His is in the throat as well. but it's larynx, I think, and whereas mine is just this on the neck and the back of it's on my tonsil actually. So, hey Laura, and I don't know who that is. There we go, Vilma. And one of the things, he and I were texting this week, and he gave me a really important piece of information. He didn't do chemo, but he was doing the same toxic spit thing. And so that told me basically that the toxic spit thing is from the radiation and not from the chemo, which I was thinking it was the chemo, and I was hoping that, the chemo, that when the chemo got worn out of me, that would, then I'd be able to, get on with life. That the toxic spit would go away at that point. But it turns out, it's the radiation. And what we know about the radiation is that the effects of radiation are actually cumulative. So even though I got treated, irradiated 3 weeks ago, it's still building. It hasn't peaked yet. It's still doing its job. It's still killing things. And I've gotten to the point where I can actually tell, I can feel it. There are times in the day, like at night, I can actually feel it, radiating basically. And sometimes it actually feels like, if you've ever had Novocaine, it feels like when the Novocaine starts to wear off, you can, and your cells start to feel like you're gonna be able to feel them normally shortly, but you're just stuck in that place where it feels like you're almost gonna be able to feel. Anyway, that's the good news. And right when that morning, actually, that he and I had that conversation, and I figured out that the way that I've been thinking about it was wrong. That was the day that I started eating food, even though I couldn't taste it, still can't taste it. I realized that, what I really need to do right now is just get over the toxic spit thing and get over the urge to retch, and just, man up and eat some damn food. Just go ahead and swallow the food, David, and start putting on some calories. Because if I kept going the way I wasn't going to be around. So, anyway, that is what's up. And that's one of the good newses. Got another good news. There's actually two parts to this. My book that I've been threatening you all with for the past 6 months. It's called The Natural History of Life and Death is the main title, and the subtitle goes something like this. WTF is really going on here. Everything you really need to know right now about the Earth's naturally occurring subtle energy field and how to use it. I've been working on this book for the better part of 10 years. I didn't realize that, but it has been 10 years. And there have been so many major events, huge chunks of information that have come forward in that time. And one of them just dropped in my lap 3 days ago. And what came is, some of you may know that I've been working with this brother named Rory Duff McQuestion. We've known one another for 20 years. We met on Silbury Hill on the autumnal equinox in the rain in 1999. And we worked on the Conscious Evolution Day global meditations together. And we've been, working on the you know, he's been informing me about the Earth's naturally occurring subtle energy field. He's been teaching dowsing for more than 25 years. His background is as a geologist. He worked for 7 years. He worked underground in the gold mines in South Africa. He's a Brit. And if you're watching, Rory, hey! About 10 years ago, he made some major discoveries about the naturally occurring subtle energy grid. He did a study where he basically almost hourly for about a year and a half recorded the movements of the grid, of the ley lines in his vicinity, and through those observations kind of gained an understanding of the nature of the grid and how it works. And he's been sharing that information, been very generous with that information over the years. And he's been working with a lot of people to repair the grid where it needs it. And so one of the things he discovered is this series of the largest ley lines on the planet are what are called, he calls them type 5 energy lines. They're also known as Emperor Dragon lines. And they're caused by cosmic rays coming from galactic cores, active galactic nuclei in our galactic neighborhood. And until 3 years ago, there were 3 pairs of those that went all the way around the planet, and they crossed one another in 6 places, and 2 of those places were in the ocean. So you can imagine the power of a line like that, where 2 of them cross, 2 or more of them cross. And one of those places is Mount Kailash in, I think it's in Tibet, and or Nepal, in the Himalayas anyway. It's the most sacred mountain to the people of that region, and like 5 religions that mountain is sacred to in that area. So that gives you an idea of the power of just one of those spots. Well, it turns out that 3 years ago, 3 more, between 2017 and 2019, 3 more sets, 3 more pairs showed up on the planet, so that now there are 6 of them. And as it turns out, one of those pairs crosses the United States from coast to coast. And where it comes out of the ocean on the west coast is at a place called Jade Cove. And the first place it crosses another line is about 100 yards away from the archaeological site I discovered in 1994. And when he sent me an aerial photograph of this, from Google Maps, satellite photograph, last July or June. And I think when he sent it to me, he didn't realize that in the foreground was the site that I discovered, because I knew the picture immediately because I've looked at it a gazillion times over the past 10 years. And it took me a couple of months to finally send him an email and say, did you know that in the foreground is the archaeological site I discovered? But anyway, we're going to pause for the cause here. Let's take a quick look around. There is a friggin' helicopter. In a friggin' helicopter. Hey, Dr. Deb. So, where it's at. Okay, so the other day, I asked him, he came to visit here 2 months ago, or a month ago, I think. Was it a month? No, it was in February. I asked him to send me the map, a big picture map of the ley lines of the Emperor Dragons, with the new and the old ones. And on I think it was Monday or Tuesday, he did. And I immediately put them into the manuscript, along with the detailed email that he sent me with the key points he wanted people to realize about in interpreting the lines, the maps. So that's in the book, and I'm happy to report my other good news is that as of this morning, about 11 o'clock, I finished the final rewrite of the manuscript. Bump. And what this means is that now we go into, I personally take a couple of days off, and we go into the to gain perspectives, gain some distance from this, so that I can then go begin the final proofread, the final edit. And if there is anybody that would like to help with the proofreading, you're more than welcome to. All you need to do is just send me a personal message, and I'll send you a copy of the PDF. And what you do is, all you have to do is read the book. In hopefully within like 5 days. I want to have this done. Where are we now? I want to have this done by this time next week. So all you have to do is read it, and when you find a typo or anything that doesn't make any sense, misspelled words or spaces between place where there should be a comma, or there's a comma, a space, a comma, and then another space, something like that. You just send me an email, collect it, make a whole list of them, preferably by the chapter, and say, on page 35, line 7, there's a typo. And that's all you have to do. And I'll take care of it from there. So if that sounds interesting to you, then the book is 414 pages right now. So it doesn't take that long to read. And I have to say, it's kind of interesting. So you might want to read it. And just PM me, and I'll send you out with your email address, and I'll send you the PDF. So that's about it. That's all the good news I have. I want to once again thank everybody that has donated and continues to donate to my David's Wonder Fund GoFundMe campaign, and or to my email, via PayPal, D.A.English at gmail.com. Because, as I said earlier, the reason I'm standing here today is because the universe wants me to be, I guess, but also because, in large part, because of every person that gave a hoot, paid attention, answered the call, and donated time, effort, energy, and or green energy, money, to provide me with the tools to keep myself alive. I've used all of it at every opportunity to buy all the supplements that I could to get as healthy as I can to make it through this. And I know for sure that there is no way I would have been standing here if I wasn't as healthy as I was. And the reason why I was that healthy was because of all the work that we did to get me that healthy before I even started treatment. That's what got me through. And I know that if I didn't have that going on, I would be dead. If I didn't have the muscle mass that I had to go through that 26 days without eating anything solid, to do 14 days with just a water fast after the second infusion. The only way I was able to do that was because I was strong enough. And the reason I was strong enough, and my body was strong enough, and my immune system was strong enough, was because the money that you sent went into all those supplements and vitamins and food and protein and keto diet and you name it, that built me up so that I could make it through that. And there were moments, as I've said, in the past 3 weeks where it was not a foregone conclusion that I would be standing here today to talk to you. You know, and those moments, I cherish them, but they were as scary as you might imagine. You know, so if I sound a little overly grateful, fuck it, because I'm overly grateful. I'm glad to be able to be I'm glad to be alive to be overly grateful. You know, so anyway, is that it? You know how you always think of things after you've hung up that you should have said? That comeback line. I want to say one more thing. You know, I think it's really funny that the whole world is doing what I would be doing anyway. You know, it feels like I'm somehow in tune with everybody, or vice versa, or we're in tune somehow on a level, because this is, you know, I would need, there's only one person that I've been around. That's the person whose house I'm staying at. And I want to say also, I'm really grateful that I've been able to use some of the money from the GoFundMe campaign to compensate, you know, to pay rent at the place that I'm staying, to support this woman, because, you know, I have to take these long baths every day to soak, you know, and that's a whack on her water bill and her electric bill. And it feels really good to be able to be supported by this community in such a way that I can share that support with Rita Obermeyer, the person whose house I'm staying with in the canals here. You know, I feel really blessed to have this, you know, she's opened her home to me to be able to do that. And that is no small feat, because, you know, could you live with somebody who's coughing and hacking and spitting and literally spitting, you know, every couple of minutes, you know, and having to listen to them retch in the middle of the night? I mean, that's just like, I don't know that I could do it, just, you know, to be honest. But, you know, she's, without complaint, she's opened her house to me. And I'm hoping to get out of there as soon as I possibly can. I may sound very, you know, a lot of energy right now, but I'm definitely losing it. And I'm going to need to go lie down shortly. But I've been very excited. One of the things, that reason why I'm so up here, is I'm so excited by the good news that I had to share. And the fact that I've had to wait a couple of days till I was in a position to. So it feels like I feel very blessed, and I'm tremendously grateful, and will forever be tremendously grateful, because I know from my experience, from my direct experience, that there is absolutely, if I ever thought I was alone in this world, I had my head up my ass, because you know, the outpouring of love and support, you know, just people saying, you know, sending me, people calling me out of the blue, even though I can't always answer the phone. You know, there are times when I haven't even been able to look at the friggin' phone. If I don't call you back, or if I don't answer right away, it's because I can't, you know, and people have been really understanding about that. I get back to people when I can. But people just texting me out of the blue, how are you doing? You know? And it means all the world. It means all the world. So I just want to say that. And I know that we're all born worthy. And this only proves that to me. So we've come to my favorite part. Take that. We've come to my favorite part of this exercise, where I get to beam you my love. So, This is me beaming love at you. Why do I love that so much? Because it's yummy. That's why. Okay, remember, we love you.